So I'm joined here in this conversation by Aidan O'Rourke and Karl Oakes, both from management of Queen's Sport. And we're just going to have a conversation about the different, I suppose, developments over the last few weeks, about what we're doing for our athletes, what we think or what we hope our athletes are doing, and for users of the PEC in general, and for those that want to stay active, some of the developments that we've been working on over the last few days, then to try and create an online platform for gym users at home. So, gents, obviously it's a pretty unprecedented situation for all of us. Can I just ask you first, what have you been doing yourselves at home to try and keep active over the last couple of weeks?
Do you want me to take this, Aidan?
There you go, Karl.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, like everybody, you're trying to adapt and adjust and get into a new way of working, and that's professionally, and then organising your home as well. I know everybody's sort of different, and they'll have their particular circumstances to navigate through. There will be first and foremost family concerns of it's a national health crisis, and there will be people trying to adjust in terms of keeping family members safe and elderly members of the family safe, and that's probably as a family, that's our priority, is just to make sure that everyone is safe and has a good support network around them, and trying to adjust on how we support particular members of our family as well, and that. So that's probably the main priority, and that trumps everything else. Sorry to use the Trump word there, but it does it does trump everything at the moment. I suppose the professional life in terms of work, we probably seen this coming a couple of weeks ago. We have a diverse range of staff members there. We've probably over 60 now in terms of the staff team, Queens, and we obviously work with volunteers and other stakeholders there as well, which is sort of the broad Queen's Sport family. And some of us have adjusted well to working from home. We can easily, or not easily, but we can more easily transition to that method of working, whereas more customer-facing staff wouldn't be used to maybe working from home, and it's probably just trying to transition through that. And the university being very supportive and helping staff achieve that, whether it is looking at technological gaps around getting access to computers and laptops and servers and things. So there's been a fair amount of work now in transitioning towards a remote working environment. I think we've sort of pulled together and tried to identify the gaps, and we've got involved in probably areas that we haven't really got involved before in. So it's been a learning curve in that respect, and probably just getting the grips with our own teams on how we communicate effectively and operate within that sphere, and we're getting better at that as the days go on. And then the last element is probably our own sort of close-knit family here of a son and a daughter. Son is P6, probably gearing up for a transfer test later on in the year. Things might change, obviously, in that respect. And I have a daughter in P3 as well. So probably adjusting there as well, as many people are around homeschooling. Although I have a bit of help at home, and that I'm married to a teacher, so I'll not promote that too widely, because I might be getting requests for some homeschooling as well. Like so. It's probably just adapting that, and we're trying to keep a routine there of as much as possible. There's a few apps there where you can ring a bell, and the schoolyard bell going off, and trying to get a routine there, and as matching it against their normal school day as possible. Of course, PE and physical activity is a big part of that, and there's a lot of online content there, and Joe Wicks has been a revelation there, and kids sort of wake up and they ask us what time is Joe Wicks on today at. So there's a great deal of help there, so that's really it in summary, Conor.
Yeah, Aidan, if we just ask you a version of the same question, how has life changed down in Drummondee over the last couple of weeks? Has it been a big change for you?
Yeah, it's a whole lot better because I don't have to bother with anybody anymore. I'm only half joking there. No, obviously a big transition. Not unlike the general public. Part of my day is kind of tough schoolmaster, enforcing the structure. Fairness, kids are keen to, at this stage, they're bored and keen to get stuck into their schoolwork or whatever else. Like Karl, of a P6 who's looking at a potential transfer test later in the year, and all of that. They're all listening to get their teeth into all of that, and the PE element of their day has grown from whatever it was in school, an hour, if that, to maybe half the day. So all of that pretty standard for what people are trying to do to cope. And I have parents who are isolating or cocooning or whatever way you want to describe it, and they're only about 50 yards away. So all of that's difficult with grandparent or grandkids on their doorstep and not being able to interact and whatever. So same challenges as everyone is facing, and trying to fit work in around that. So the remote working side of things is, as Karl says, we had anticipated and prepared for it, but day to day, obviously challenges arise and communication is difficult, and modern technology has come into its own. So trying to keep the work program ticking over and trying to manage other people's work programs as well is a challenge, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Aidan, you were playing football in the time of the foot and mouth disease epidemic.
I thought you were going to say the great famine there, but go ahead.
Well, do you remember back to that period yourself, when you were trying to stay active, and there was a bit of, I suppose people weren't really sure when competitions were going to start back up, and what sort of coping mechanisms did you have at that time yourself around keeping yourself active and prepared towards competition?
Yeah, it wasn't quite as rigorous in terms of a lockdown as this is. It was more a case of sort of washing your shoes and wiping your feet and hands or whatever whenever you went from one sphere to another. Football was impacted, obviously. All sport was, and there were difficult weeks there where we didn't know what was going to continue, whether competition was going to end, and there was a lot of individual training. Came out of it quite quickly in comparison to maybe what we're facing now, and there wasn't the same rigors around preclusion of group or team training for the same length of time. So it was a difficult enough period, and when you were in it, it was a disaster. Obviously, as an athlete who only wanted to compete, it felt as if the world was against you. But it passed quite quickly in comparison to what we're dealing with at the moment, and. Yeah, there are some learnings from it, but the world has changed since as well, and training programs have changed, and athletes and coaches' outlook on what you can achieve have changed also. So I think we're into a new realm here, and the challenges are considerable.
Yeah. And Karl, just in terms of trying to counteract some of those challenges, we're setting out a significant program of online classes and events. I wonder if you could just talk through some of the things that we're going to be offering. It's not just members, of course, that we're offering this to, just to the general public to try and stay active during this period.
Yeah, look, I think everyone's sort of researched online here now of how to cope through the week, and there's a plethora of information and tools and resources right across the spectrum. I suppose we've tried to use our own resource, and we have expertise there at hand across a range of areas. So we sort of spent a wee bit more time on it, to be honest, to try and get it right and try and use the expertise to make it more personable avenue for people to access content. But plus we are experts in the various fields. So we believe that the information is not only engaging our members and students and staff but it's also providing some helpful resource to get people through the week. And it looks as if we're in this for the long haul. So it's a marathon, and so we did spend a bit of time, and it was a real collaborative effort there. And I know yourself, you're involved in the video editing side of things. So between that and all the platforms that we operate in, between Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, our web, and now we've launched a YouTube channel. So we're trying to keep it as dynamic and as diverse as possible. We're covering things in terms of fitness, which is the staple of how people try to survive in these situations, getting out, and albeit within the parameters as the guidelines set out. So there's a range of daily classes. There's exercise of the day. We're trying to incorporate a live version of the class, which would be sort of twice a week. We also have a range of blogs and fitness advice around well-being and on how to use fitness to improve your well-being within the confines of maybe a bedroom. Like a lot of our accommodation students are at home now, which is good that they're in the safety of their home, but a lot are on campus, believe it or not. So we have about 500 students, I believe, still in accommodation. They can't get home. There's a lot of international students within that cohort. So they're in the confines of not only an accommodation, but it's in the confines of a room. So it's a big challenge, mental challenge, for those students to get through the day, and to get through the hour. Never mind the day. So we're going to aim a lot of that resource and a lot of that content at our students, our staff. Staff are also on campus delivering the critical services that need to be delivered. So hopefully you will get something out of it. We're also pitching this at our members. We have about 12,000 members of the gym, and again, they're going to get access to a lot of content online. But we're probably trying to keep within in the Queen's family here first and foremost, and then stretch beyond that into sort of mental skills, techniques, using some of our staff with Hugh Campbell on board, who does a lot of support in that area with our athletes. So hopefully we'll be able to deliver an online version of what he does over the coming weeks, and then probably profiling some athletes that we have, sort of take some of the learnings that the student athletes can maybe portray, and bring forward to the general public of how they cope, and student athletes are able to adapt, and maybe it'll touch on that, of how they approach these new times, and hopefully probably get a few learnings out there in terms of what other people can do. So look, there's a suite of information that's going to be available, and I would encourage everybody to try and tap into it as we go on. And we will try to bring in some lighthearted areas, because we can't get too serious in this stuff as well. So that's all part of the coping mechanisms of bringing some lighthearted elements to this, and we'll hopefully incorporate that in as we go along.
Yeah, Aidan, maybe just ask you to take up that train of thought. We just specifically, I suppose, around what we're doing for our athletes and for our EAPs, for our academy athletes in particular. What things do we have set up for them?
Yeah, there's a challenge around that, as there is with all of the areas that Karl has outlined, specifically with the elite athlete program and the students who are on that at the moment. First and foremost, we want to try and add some structure to their week. So, like someone who potentially is at home and unable to work, our students aren't quite in that category, because academics continue and progress is required, and they are going to be assessed in some shape or form. So they need to continue to make progress. They're serious about what they're doing from a sporting perspective. So they need to have structure around how they address that as well. So first and foremost, we try and help them put some structure to their week, plan their days, and then when you start getting into all of that, you start thinking about planning nutrition, planning hydration, planning recovery, exactly where the study fit in your day, exactly when is it best to train, which types of training fit best where in your day. So if you factor all of those things in, they can be busy through their day if they want to. If they don't have that structure, PlayStation and podcasts and all of these other distractions can take over. So first and foremost, if we can add some structure to the week, that's more than 50% of what we'll try to do with them. They're at a certain level. These athletes, they don't need a whole pile of direction in terms of being told to do X or Y. They may be doing absolutely nothing. Of course, some of them listening to this might be having a laugh for themselves. But most of them are very serious about what they do, and first and foremost, the conditioning side of things. There are a lot of very simple things that they can do to keep ticking over. And it's hard to make massive progress with your conditioning, I suppose, at the minute within the confines of what you can do within your own home, but they all have a plan to do that. The biggest challenge is around the skills of your sport, and how you maintain exactly where you are within your season, and potentially even build on that. So depending on what your sport is, we try and talk to them about deliberate practice as opposed to just repetition for the sake of it, and how they can build constructive, deliberate work on their skills that are sport specific, and that is the biggest challenge of it. Related to all of that is I suppose motivation and goal setting and keeping your eye on the prize. And there's a challenge for these guys, probably more so than anybody else, around when is competition going to resume. Is the season over? Is there anything ahead for me in the next 3 months? And if they fall into the trap of thinking, it's going to be September or October before I have to do anything serious again, I mean, they'll drift. That doesn't mean they might necessarily stop doing what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing, but the same intensity won't be there. They won't have a focus to what they're trying to achieve. So that the psychological side of trying to help competitors stay competitive from day to day is a big challenge. And then so for all of that, we would lean on the expertise that we have on the staff. And Karl mentioned Hugh Campbell, for example, who works with the athletes on mental skills and I suppose their why in terms of exactly what motivates them to try and push forward. All of that is a challenge at this time. So we try and give this all of the athletes as much support, advice, the tools that they need to try and push on and maintain what they've been doing in this period. But ultimately, like most things, it's up to themselves to use those tools to try and navigate their way through as best they can.
Okay, and I suppose most things are postponed or cancelled at this stage, and even from an internal perspective in Queens, there are a lot of things which are now put on the long finger. But one thing which is going to be coming up very soon is the deadline for the Elite Athlete Programme. I wonder if you would just say a couple of words about that. So we're going to extend the deadline by a week until I think it's the 7th of April.
Yeah, so the deadline originally was this Wednesday, so it's going to push out for an additional week. And that's just to enable both our own staff and students who are out there who intended to apply, who maybe got sidetracked by more serious issues in terms of the national health crisis. So for over the course of the next week, now that work programs for ourselves and everybody's understanding of the environment has maybe settled down a little bit, we're going to use that time to flag the opportunity. And this is obviously for the September 2021 intake, and I mean, looking at the applications already, it's kind of an exciting time for Queens in terms of the quality of the applicants already in, and that's before we even factor in returning athletes from the programme currently. There's a number of athletes probably final year studying at Queens and might be departing at the end of this academic year, and there are spaces opening up on the scheme. So there's huge opportunities and potential for In the first instance, the number of sports represented on the elite athlete program and the depth of the quality to continue to grow as it has done year on year over the last 5 or 6 years.
Thanks, Karl. Just to finish off, I suppose a bigger picture question. It only seems like yesterday that we were standing there at Upper Malone opening the new hockey pitch with the Ireland team there and the sun shining, and it seemed like everything was happy in the valley. And now we're all separated and are confined to our homes, having to learn how to use Microsoft Teams. And I suppose my question is just from a university management perspective, just how monumental has the job of work been over the last fortnight to transition everyone to home working and to shut down a facility like the PEC?
Yeah, look, like we run 5 facilities. Some are easier to shut down than others. So if you take, for instance, we have a boathouse there, and it's fairly easy. You know, it's I'll not mention how much stock is in there because in fear of promoting the fact that we have a lot of
10
expensive
quid's worth
boats in a boathouse. But look, it's fairly simple to close a facility like that. I think it gets more complex if you look at the indoor centre. We have a swimming pool there, and there's additional layers that need to be taken into account when you're dealing with a large building like that. And then Upper Malone, it's a huge site with many outdoor pitches. I suppose you have to take the positive here too. We'll have really great pitches at the end of this because there'll be very little activity, mainly on the grass pitches. So it's I think some of the state staff are still working. I think just given the environment that they're able to work within the social distancing parameters. So look, you have to take the positives out of it, as well, and it does give staff a bit of time to reflect on what they're doing, and it gives them, whether they like it or not, it gives them a bit more time to prepare and maybe take forward things that they couldn't do when they were working in sort of a more hectic environment, trying to get things done day to day. So you have to take the positives, and hopefully it does give people time to reflect and take stock of where they're at, and maybe map out where the future lies. But look, I'll not dress it up. It has been a major disruption. We had a plan for a China series there with hockey on the back of the launch, and they were playing Ireland at our venue for a 4-day series, which is gone. The 5K race was delayed. There's probably no real chance of anything happening. I'll be unwise to tell you a date for when things will start to be the new norm. But look, it'll probably be the same as the closure. It was a transition to closure, and then I would say once there's the health crisis is sort of managing itself, there will be a transition to opening as well. So hopefully, I think with the plans that we have put in place at home, that will be getting off to a decent start once we start to get back to some degree of normality.
I suppose just a very, very last point to either of you. Would you have a short message to colleagues, to members of staff, or to students to keep in mind over the next while, or maybe there's some more updated university advice to reiterate to people associated with the university?
Yeah, look, I know that is a challenging time, adapting, and you probably think there's no end of this really. If you look at the news headlines, constant news coming through, and they seem to be around the same stories. So I would probably encourage staff to check in with the national news, but not be fixated by it either. So I would encourage staff to break away from that as much as they can. Not breaking away entirely, because there's obviously important information there that needs to be disseminated down. But things like I've found that keeping a diary for myself has been helpful. Mapping out the key areas that I want to achieve in the day, and that's just not work. That's in terms of food intake and fitness, obviously, and looking at some podcasts recently. So tapping into, albeit that it is struggle to get some alone time now when you're stuck in the house. And probably just looking at other areas of work that I'm maybe involved in that you can sort of get your teeth into too, away from your core working hours. So it's probably just adapting and I suppose you have to take solace in the fact that everyone's in this together, really, and it is a global pandemic. So that's been helpful too, knowing that everyone's sort of gone through the same thing. So what I would say to staff and students, I know Aidan alluded to the student element, and we do have a great team here. Then they're willing to support any student, no matter if it's the elite athlete or if it's anybody involved in the clubs or if it's any student, to be honest. If there's any advice around the coping mechanisms that we're trying to push out, and it is a broad range of things. So look, if there's any info or advice that we can help with, our staff are willing and able to support any member of the student community and the staff community for that matter. And we have that sort of culture in sport that it's a helpful environment that we sort of pull together on. So look, what I would say to finally the students and staff is that just try and remain positive. Try and see the good things that this has brought, and that you're not alone, and we're here to help. So that's really the summary.
Great. Aidan, anything you want to add to that just before we finish?
Yeah, I suppose not to duplicate, so I'll reiterate all that Karl has outlined, but I would also see this as an opportunity. Working from home, for me personally, takes away about 2.5 hours a day of commute, which gives me a bit more productive time. It's an opportunity to mold your own day, build good habits into it. As Karl said, make provision for improving your fitness, your overall well-being, an opportunity to spend time with your family, build relationships there. So there's lots of opportunity to use this time. It's a different time, obviously. It's a different environment than everybody is used to day to day, but there are opportunities there to broaden your capacity to read and to do things that you always had on the long finger. So there's an opportunity. I think mixed into all of this, there's always a silver lining in there somewhere.
I taught my son just on a lighthearted note. I taught my son how to cook an omelette the other day. So I'm moving on to tea now. So hopefully by the end of this now,
you're teaching him
homemade
that you require. You're teaching him all the things you require.
Yeah.
Good tactic.
You have to use it as an opportunity.
Well, look, thanks very much for the conversation. I hope this would be useful to members of staff, to students, to any members of the general public who happen to be listening. And we hope to bring you some more updates like this over the course of the coming weeks and months. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on this Queen Sport podcast, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks, Conor. Thanks.
It's Conor, good stuff.
Great.